Field trip, field trip. Welcome to the field trip, field trip. Okay, we're not actually going on a field trip today, but we are going to talk about field trips, specifically adult field trips, and why they are so important to your creativity and to your soul. Hi, I'm Charlotte DeMolay, and welcome to Creative Soul Life. We are going to talk about adult field trips today. This originated with me back in, I'd like to say the early 90s, I guess. I had to read, and I say had to lightly, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And if you are any sort of creative artistic soul, I'm sure you've read this or it's on your library or to read list. But it's actually a college assignment, and it's a really good book. And she talks about taking yourself on an artist date. And according to Julia, the artist date is an artist date is a block of time, perhaps 2 hours weekly, especially set aside and committed to nurturing your creative consciousness, your inner artist. The artist date is just for yourself, she says. You do not take anyone on this artist date, but you and your inner artist, aka your creative child. This means no lovers, no friends, no spouses, no children, no hangers on of any type. So that's where it started with me. And again, I was fresh out of college. I would load up my backpack with my sketchbook and drawing utensils, water bottle, and I would do things like walk around my neighborhood. And one time I went to the zoo. I went sketching at the zoo. One time I went to an indoor mall and sat down and was sketching people. And I looked at this very much as a way to kind of recharge my creativity, to brush up on my skills. I was not able to do it weekly. At the time, I was aiming for monthly. And I would get to it mostly once a month, maybe every other month. And then, of course, life happens like it does with all of us, more children. And, that whole no hangers on was kind of tough. And I just forgot about them. Even though I was still immersed in art and art making, art teaching, I just completely forgot about the artist date. And then somewhere, probably about 15 years ago, I started going on what I called field trips. And they started on my birthday. I would take that whole day. I've always considered my birthday a holiday, and I've taught my children their birthdays are a holiday. So if your birthday is not a holiday, your birthday is a holiday. It needs to be a holiday. Anyway, I would take the entire day to myself because this was when my kids were in school. And we'd have our celebration at night and stuff. But during the day, they get dropped off in school, and I would go on my field trip. And it usually involved art of some type, very often nature for me. I'd take a walk, I'd go to a nature center or a park, get outside in the fresh air. If I could go see an exhibit, I would do that. Usually involved a stop at a coffee shop, somewhere neat for lunch, somewhere I hadn't been, or maybe someplace that was a favorite to me. And I really enjoyed these, but again, once a year was all I did them for several years. And then about 10 years ago, I was reading one of my like mommy bloggers and stuff and doing this sort of planning your year self help type course. And they were talking about the things that deplete you and things that fill you up. And things that deplete me are things like errands and housework and just routine things are pretty depleting. But really got my attention was when I was writing what filled me up. And the answer was art, nature, creativity, exploring coffee shops, all these things that I did on my birthday once a year. And so kind of the little light bulb went off on my head, and I realized this did not need to be once a year. If this was this enriching and it felt good, and I still remember my birthday trips. I mean, it just felt great to be out doing something that was just because I wanted to. There wasn't, specific things I needed to get done. I just did what I wanted to do. And that's when I decided I needed to do this monthly. Weekly still a stretch. So it went on my calendar about 10 years ago, and it was called Field Trip. And I would put Field Trip on my calendar and try and carve out at least part of a day to spend with that type of thing in mind, just somewhere that I wanted to go for myself. And over the past 10 years, this has ebbed and flowed. Sometimes it was just going to a coffee shop and writing. That's where my coffee conversations on my blogs come from. Sometimes in some stages of my life, that's all I've got time for. But I will set aside 2 hours, go to a coffee shop, order a nice cup of coffee, usually breakfast, and sit there and write up something for my blog or work on some journaling. Um, I, a lot of times I can get in at least most of a day. For a couple of years, I was with a garden club out in the island where we lived, and they only met for part of the year because a lot of them were snowbirders. So I kind of incorporated that. We had our meeting in the morning, then we would do lunch, and in the afternoon, I would continue that thread of me time, field trip time, and I would put that as my field trip day. And then I would go on to something in the afternoon, again, art or nature related for me, because that's what fills me up, art and nature. So you really realize how important they are if you've been doing them and then for some reason you stop. I don't know why, but in 2022, again, it was one of those years I just forgot about them. And I was doing kind of an end of the year recap and going over things. And I was like, wait a minute, I didn't go on any field trips. And I was kind of the end of 2022, I could feel that. I could feel that heaviness of not stopping and taking that time for myself, not taking that time to recharge my inner battery. And I want to say creative battery, but it's deeper than that. It really is recharging your soul. And that time that is spent on the things that are important and meaningful to you, just because, not to make or produce or create or nurture someone else. It's just for you and your soul. So I resolved that 2023 I would get back to them, and I did. And I stuck through it to it pretty well in 2023. That's when I started kind of, sometimes I would stick them on the tail end of my um, garden meetings. And in fact, it was one of my field trips that led me to the gallery I was in for about a year. I had visited them on one of my artist field trip dates and met some lovely artists. They invited me to come into their critiques and open studios, and I really did, and I enjoyed them and ended up joining that gallery. So, you know, really exciting things can come from field trips. But then, okay, 2024, we moved, obviously. So for a few months, they again fell to the wayside. And I realized that, and I started trying to get back to my schedule. And I'm like, okay, these have got to go back on it. So I'm back to putting it on my calendar now. Sometimes it's not a whole day. Sometimes it's just the morning. Sometimes if I do it that way, I can sneak in a couple of them a month. Like maybe I will go for coffee, spend a couple hours lingering over that and doing some writing, and then I'll go do my errands. Or I'll go do my errands and then stop somewhere for lunch and then go take a walk in a park before I come home. So my point is, there are many different ways that you can take yourself on an adult field trip and many different ways to fit it into your schedule. And a lot of this depends on your season of life. For example, I didn't do them when I was a young mom, when I had the kids at home before they were all in school. One, I forgot about them. And two, it's hard to find that time alone. But I encourage you, honestly, that's probably when you need them the most. That's when you need some adult time with yourself. And that was another key part about this, as you read, when I read from Julia's book, being alone is very key to these adult field trips. And if you listen to my episode reviewing A Gift from the Sea by Amaro Lindbergh, she talks about the importance of being alone and said that we're almost afraid of being alone. But we need it. We need to shut out the noise of our daily routine, our expectations, our community expectations, the world's expectations. If you are anywhere near a news story these days, it can be overwhelming. And these artist dates give you that time alone where it's just you and yourself, your thoughts, your hopes, your dreams, your wishes, your wants, your breath. You're just alone with your mind and your breath. So, again, if you're a young mom, try and do some trades. See if you can pitch the idea to another mom friend. See if you can do some trade offs. with your kids, and they can go on a field trip. You keep their kids, they keep yours, you go on the field trip. Work it out with your partner. Say, look, I just need 2 hours on a Saturday morning so I can go sit in a coffee shop. I need 2 hours on a Wednesday evening. I want to go sit at the park and do some sketching, do some drawing, or just look around and sit and be calm. Try and carve out just a small sliver of time. And again, do some bargaining if you need to. Now, when your kids go to school, and if you're not working full time, then you've got the opportunity to expand it a bit. See if you can get out for more than an hour or two or a couple hours. See if you can get out for half a day, or if you're really lucky, a full day. If you're a work outside of the home, what can you do on your lunch break? I know when my mom was working, one of the grocery stores had a really good salad bar, and she would go and make a salad and go sit at a park, and just she took her lunch hour, and that's what she did. She had her salad sitting at the park, just sort of sitting under the trees and quiet and calm, and that gave her a break to then get back to work and then come home with the chaos of kids and dinner and everything else. And in fact, I think my mom cherished that time so much, she still does it, even though she's retired. She lives in a rural area and goes into kind of the town and runs her errands and things on Mondays. And she still goes and gets her salad bar, and we'll sit sometimes in the parking lot of her next errand or whatever. She takes that time and calm and will read and eat her salad, and has that time to herself. So you can carve out just an hour, you can carve out 2 hours. If you're extremely lucky, carve out a day. Those are the best, when you can take a whole day and put things together and make a field trip. So, what does a 1 hour adult field trip look like? As we've talked about, that can be coffee in a new shop, or tea, whatever your morning breakfast is, lunch at a new place, or lunch by yourself, lunch at the park, lunch with a book or a podcast. It can be stopping at a new store, doing a little shopping, especially something that's does something that refills your soul. For example, I love to cook. I love Williams Sonoma Kitchen Store. I don't know if I've ever bought anything there because it is a little out of my price range, but it's a beautiful store, and it's nourishing, inspiring, creative just to walk around it and look at the different things, and just the aesthetics of it, their cookbooks. And I find that nourishing. Um, any sort of craft shop, I can lose myself for hours in a craft shop or a bookshop, hands down. If you want to remove the temptation of buying, go find your local library. That is a fantastic place to browse books. Sometimes they've expanded. They've got magazine selections, maker spaces. A lot of them have little conference rooms. Like if you don't want to sit out, you want some quiet space, take a stack of magazines and books and reserve one of the conference rooms and really have some nice quiet time, or just hide in the stacks. Barnes and Noble is making a comeback, and I remember that was a lot of my on my birthday field trips. I would go to Barnes and Noble for lunch, or for the coffee, my morning coffee or afternoon coffee. In fact, I think it was afternoon coffee because that's Starbucks would give you your freebies, and they were in the Barnes and Noble. I'd get my coffee and I'd go find some books and sit in one of their comfy lounge chairs and browse for a while. Find a local bookshop or something like that. Um, I like thrift shops. Go do a little retail therapy without breaking the bank. You can even make like a creative game out of it and set yourself a spending limit of $10, and I'm going to find some things that I can do something creative with. You can make a little game or challenge for yourself. There's lots of different ways to do brief, 1 hour, 2 hour field trips. Now, if you have half a day, that's a perfect time to explore, again, a gallery, or maybe something like a museum, a history museum, whatever, or a science museum, whatever kind of thing is kind of nourishing to you. You can plan a longer visit to something like that, or a really long walk or hike. In fact, my field trip last week was to take a hike in a nature preserve close to my house. Here's a little clip from that. Today's field trip was a hike at a preserve that's kind of close to my house, but I haven't been on it before. So it was new, it was exploring. It's about 3.5 miles. I'm on my way back now. I think I have about a mile left. And I also had a couple of geocaches to find on this. So that's another one of my hobbies, and it's fun. And I often do that on field trips. So nature is one of my favorites. I had a park over in Pinellas County. I called it the Gator Park. And I would take my camera and photograph gators and birds and dragonflies and all kinds of things. Today I just had my phone because, like I said, it was the hiking, the newness, the exploration, and looking for the geocaches. Although I did see a cute little woodpecker, tried to take some pictures. I'll see what it looks like when I get home. Anyway, I highly recommend nature and getting outside in nature as in a field trip. So excuse the sweatiness, but that's what I like to do on my field trips. I love getting out in nature. It has probably surpassed the art part. Sorry, there's a bee on my porch. Um, Nature's probably surpassed the art part of my field trips. Maybe not always, but very frequently it involves a walk or something in nature. And a lot of it's because I get so much inspiration from it. In fact, so much, I even have a YouTube video on finding your creative spark outside. I'll put a link to that wherever it is. There's a link. And if you're listening on a podcast, I'll put it down in the show notes, the link to Creative Spark Outside. Because to me, that's the most nourishing thing for me, is to get outside. It fuels me creatively. It fuels my soul. It is my favorite adult field trip. Now, a whole day. Uh, the pinnacle of field trips. It was that way when you were a kid. Remember when you had something, you loaded up on the bus and you had your little brown sack lunch or whatever. You had to bring those. You could throw everything away and they got all beat and smushy, but it did not matter because you were away from school, you were away from routine. Just that feeling of going to get to do something new. Those are the best. And when you have a day, you can have that feeling again as a grown-up. String together some of the smaller things. Start off with coffee, take a walk somewhere, go to lunch somewhere that you enjoy, spend the afternoon in a gallery or a museum or a library. You can spend an entire day just doing things for yourself, by yourself, fulfilling yourself. Try it. That's all I ask. Put it on your calendar. Whatever your seasonal life looks like, if it's 1 hour, 2 hours, half day, or a full day, put it on your calendar right now. And if you already do this, let me know what you do. Where is it you go? And what are you getting out of it? And if you've never done this, give me your thoughts. Give it a try. Let me know how it goes. I don't think for a minute you'll regret it. And if you're like me and you realize how nourishing it is, it will very quickly become a part of your life, a needed part of your life. Anyway, figure out a field trip, go be creative, and feed your soul. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Creative Soul Life. Thank you for listening. I really do appreciate it. And if you'd like more, then hit follow, like, whatever platform you're on, and reach out and connect with me. I'd love to hear how you incorporate these things that I talk about into your life. Thank you.